recognition of the day. My second item, congratulations to the Wandillagong Nut Festival organisers, and I know one of our fellow councillors was on the volunteer committee there, and it was a terrific event. It really is an event for all. Lots of visitors, but also lots of locals connecting and having a terrific day out in a beautiful setting. So congratulations to them also.
Councillor Nicholas.
This is what happens when you're last in the line or almost last in line. But I wanted to add my condolences to those people who lost friends and family on Saturday at the aeroplane accident at Mount Beauty, and also send my thoughts to the first responders, because I know how dreadfully hard it is when you turn up and it's such an awful situation, and thank them for doing the best they could. Also, yes, the Anzac Day in Bright was fantastic, and I did hear from others that across the Shire the events were also well attended and well thought of. I had more people than I've ever had in the past come up to you after the event and say what a terrific event it was in Bright, and there were at least 3 from other places, one even as far away as Western Australia, who said it was a great ceremony. And the Nut Festival, I'm not actually on the committee at all, I just did a lot of volunteering. It was a terrific attendance, a terrific event, and again, lots of really good feedback. So well done to the committee who put it together. And particularly, I think some of the feedback I got was about the music, so the selection of the bands and the ability to draw that music from across the state, and I think the nation, is great for Wandillagong and the Alpine Shire in general. So thanks and well done, everybody.
Councillor Jonas.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. As with the other councillors in relation to the incident here at Mount Beauty, and I also attended with the Mayor at the Myrtleford Anzac Day event, which was extremely well represented by members of the community. And I'd like to also congratulate the Myrtleford RSL on the commissioning of a mosaic, peacekeeping mosaic out the front of the RSL there, done by the local crackpots. A magnificent piece of work. Should you be travelling past there in Smith Street, just stop and have a look. It's a beautiful piece of work that I think it's one of the best ones they've done. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The other councillors have mentioned the tragic events last Saturday, also Anzac Day. A lot of you around here hopefully will have seen a group of people getting around with blue tops on in the last week, 10 days. It's the Australian RV Touring Club, and it's an Australian-wide club. We had about between 70 and 75 vans and RV vehicles parked at the Rec Reserve in Myrtleford for 10 days. And this was their 25th anniversary of this particular rally. They were there for close to 10 days. And what they do is they come empty esky, so they utilise everything from within the infrastructure of the town, wherever they go. They buy locally, and they also do a tally of how much they've actually put back into the community. In this instance, they calculated that in that period of time, including fuel, everything else, about $183,000 was put back into the community. I was there at their closing ceremony on Anzac Day. The other thing that they do, they have internal raffles and things, and then they donate that money back into a local community as well. So they really don't take anything away from them, but they bring a lot here. So I congratulate them on that one. That's about all for obituaries and congratulations. Now, item 6, declarations of councillors of conflict of interest. Councillor Kelly has declared a general conflict of interest with respect to the following items, 8.2.5 and 8.2.6. I might just ask Councillor Kelly at this time, to save time later, whether he would like to just explain what that general conflict is.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll speak to those briefly now and actually add a third.
Certainly.
Item 821 regarding the Murray to Mountains trail agenda item. My partner was involved in a preliminary workshop with Tourism Northeast on the broader project there, so I'll declare a general conflict of interest there. Item 825 is actually a material conflict of interest. That one's around a proposal for here in Mount Beauty around the in the recreational space and the use of the Mount Beauty regulating pondage in that draft plan. That asset is owned and operated by my employer, AGL Energy, so I'll declare a material conflict of interest on that one and step out of the room also. And then lastly, 826, which is an agenda item around seeking new approaches to interacting with the electricity market. Again, my employer is a participant in that market. I'm a participant in that market, so I'll declare a general conflict of interest and step out of the room for that one as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Item 7 is public questions, and as those of you who've been following these riveting council meetings for the last 6 months have heard me often speak about the fact that public questions, you're allowed 2 questions only. We read out those that have been sent in as a question on note as written first, and then we will ask the questions from the floor. What we have done though for the last 2 months now is to publish some governance rules around public questions, and for those of you who do have a copy there, if I deem that the question is irrelevant or not related to something specific to the agenda for the night, or is not of a general enough community interest, then I might disallow that question. Don't feel that you've been let out. You have plenty of opportunity to address those questions either through info@alpineshire.vic.gov.au, and you will get a response to that question, which will be a measured response or a technical response or the correct response, whichever it happens to be. The other form of interaction that you can have with any specific questions is that the CEO and myself conduct one-on-one interviews, or not interviews, but discussions with anybody interested on the Friday prior to the council meeting. Please avail yourself of that if you have any personal issues. That's the other thing. Question time should really be related to things that are of general or wider import. So, public questions tonight. And for those who are present, which are probably Mount Beauty people, the majority of questions tonight do relate to one of the items on our agenda tonight, and that is to do with the Mystic Park in Bright. So, the first... Right, okay, then we have 4 questions tonight. We did receive a question, but it was after the cut-off time, but it's related to the same thing, so it will be covered in the answers to these. Question 1 tonight is from Aaron Kapanika. Mountain bike uplift shuttles are a major component of Mystic Park's user experience. In order to operate a commercial uplift service in Victoria, a person or entity must be an accredited bus operator with the state government's Safe Transport Victoria. Can Council advise whether Elevations Parks are an accredited bus operator in Victoria as legally required? That's question 1. Question 2 from the same person is the process to become an accredited bus operator in Victoria generally takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months. If Elevation Parks is not an accredited bus operator in Victoria, what will Council do to ensure that from contract commencement on the 1st of July, the uplift service offered to Mystic Park 7 days a week is operated legally by an accredited bus operator by Safe Transport Victoria?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Yes, certainly.
Just as a point of order, if I could ask for a discussion. As we have not voted on this matter, are these questions appropriate at this time?
I believe that these questions may even supply more information as to your upcoming decision on this particular matter.
Okay, thank you.
Tonight, because the questions have been submitted to the Alpine Shire prior to 5 o'clock yesterday. Our Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, has been able to put together some formal responses to these questions. Mr Rees, would you like to respond to those first two questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for your questions. So to the first question, can Council advise whether Elevation Park is an accredited bus operator in Victoria? The answer is no. Elevation Parks are not an accredited bus operator in Victoria. However, they are an accredited bus operator in the state of Tasmania, and there is, through mutual recognition legislation, the opportunity to apply for recognition of that qualification in Victoria, which would enable them to achieve that accreditation. And then secondly, what will Council do if this accreditation is not achieved? We will work with the appointed operator to become an accredited bus operator in Victoria. And if that's not possible within the mobilisation timing, an interim arrangement will be put in place to enable that service to be delivered. So activities such as chartering an accredited bus operator would be implemented as an interim measure.
Thank you, Mr Rees. Councillor Janus, I do take seriously your considerable point of order regarding these questions, and I think this just gives more clarity as to how your decision is going to be informed later on when we do make a decision on this particular item in the agenda. All right?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I take your decision.
Thank you. Question 2 also has two questions from Mr Craig Lawn. Question 1 goes into a bit of background around Elevation Park's Medina Bike Park, and actually comments on a couple of deaths that occurred in that bike park, the inference being their safety record, I would assume. So the question is, has Alpine Shire Council conducted its own due diligence into these events and the operations of Elevations Park and Medina Bike Park? Question 2, considering that leading insurance companies' risk assessors have done their own risk assessment as a result of the events outlined in question 1 and withdrawn their insurance coverage as a result weighted against Elevation Park's well-documented track record, are councillors comfortable awarding management of Bright's Community Bike Park to Elevation Parks? I don't think Mr Rees could answer question 2. I think that will come down to whether the councillors are going to vote yea or nay at the end of it. So question 1, please, Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, Council has reviewed the coroner's record of investigation reports for these 2 incidents. Unfortunately, both tragic incidents. The first one occurred in 2018, and the results of the investigation made some recommendations of safety improvements to be implemented at these sorts of facilities. And in fact, the current risk management and safety management practices that are implemented by ACP, the current operator of Mystic Park, are directly informed by those recommendations. And in addition, the reality is that mountain biking is an extreme sport and it is risky. However, the reports and investigations into both of these incidents concluded that they occurred due to rider error and not due to trail and park conditions or maintenance. In addition, during the course of the tender process, the quality of documentation and the risk management plans and action plans submitted by Elevation Parks clearly indicated their focus on safety and risk management. And Council will be taking over the implementation of the standards that are currently in place at Mystic Park and as it's managed by ACP. In addition, Elevation Parks will also be providing a safety management system and staff members qualified on site and available to support their operation.
Thank you. Question 3 comes from Mr Brett Hollis, who actually identifies himself as the owner of Blue Dirt Mountain Biking. excuse me, there is a fair bit of information supplied at the start prior to the question, and I think the crux of the actual that background material is the fact that they've operated within the park for 11 years, increased licence revenues in excess of 25% over the past 12 months, and a major concern is that confronted with a loss of employment for 21 local staff and the immense impact on their personal and family lives. It comes down to basically the question, can council please explain how they quantify and accept the best return for council as per the recommendation in the face of local job losses of suitably qualified and experienced people? Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think the important piece to preface here is that it's not only council that has been involved in the assessment of the tender. We have a tender panel which conducted the assessment of all submissions, and the panel consisted of both council officers and external experts in the field, representing Alpine Cycling Club, the Chamber of Commerce, and also the Wandie Trail Runners Association. And we did this deliberately to ensure that we had the expertise available to assess the true capability and the associated expectations from each of the submissions. So in the documentation that was provided to all tenderers, and it's publicly available, the criteria were outlined, and all submissions were assessed against these criteria. And just for transparency, not going into too much of the details, obviously financial sustainability was an important criteria where there was a requirement to provide evidence of financial sustainability, appropriate investment into the park, which is really around maintenance of the product and the trails, capital works program, requirement to reinvest in the park to ensure that we continue to enhance the park and meet the community's expectations and vision for the park. Experience and capacity, so the submitter's ability to actually demonstrate experience and capacity to be able to operate a park, understand the requirements, manage occupational health and safety requirements, quality and risk. And then delivery capability. So can they deliver all required outputs to operate and manage the park over the 5-year period, and having a demonstrated and viable operating model to do so, as well as a clear vision for Mystic. And that was then also complemented by a community focus, so the ability to demonstrate ongoing community and stakeholder engagement, as well as environmental sustainability, which is a standard criteria that council normally applies. So again, demonstrated evidence and environmental management and systems and performance. So it's a comprehensive set of criteria that have been applied and assessed by an independent panel of experts.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Question 4 came from Mr. Jason Reid, who identifies as Mystic Park Management, Operations and Maintenance. And by background, relates to the significant numbers that Mystic attracts each year, around 60,000 annual visitors with a projected estimated 135,000 within 5 years. Goes on so the question arising from that is, why would council award a contract and literally hand the keys to Mystic to run the biggest single tourism draw card outside of snow season to an opposition mountain operator from Tasmania? Question 2, this Tasmanian-based company, who from all intents and purposes could risk all that has been created at Mystic to this point by simply promoting his Tasmanian development to Mystic visitors, he will also obviously take any profits made at Mystic and use it to enhance any further development his business in Tasmania, because there is no incentive to reinvest in our community. What measures has council put in place to prevent this happening? So those two questions, please. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So probably the response to the previous question really addresses how the assessment process is conducted, the criteria that have been considered, and as earlier highlighted, in order to realise the community's vision for Mystic, Elevation Parks is considered to be the strongest tenderer that has demonstrated track record and a successful world-class mountain bike park operator. And hence, on balance, looking at all of those criteria in concert, that is the conclusion of the panel's assessment. With regards to the question around reinvestment and held accountable to meet the conditions of the license and the contract, I think the key performance criteria as set out in the tender documentation clearly outlines those requirements that the contractor or the operator must meet in order to maintain their contract. And this will be assessed on a regular basis by the management committee, which will consist of council officers, HVP representatives, and the operator's senior management. And the contract terms and conditions will reflect these requirements, which will be part of the appointment of the successful operator pending council's decision.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. That leads us to now having questions from the floor. If you have had questions answered already and you are in the audience tonight, please respect the fact that 2 questions have been asked and been answered. So apart from that, do I have people from the floor who would like to ask questions? Certainly. Have you asked questions within... I've got 2 so far, yep. Have you asked questions in a council meeting prior to this? No. There's a rostrum there. Do we have a microphone up here? So there is a microphone here. Could I just get you to go up there, state your name, where you're from, and then you have 2 questions. Thank you. Microphone on. Thank you. No, you shouldn't have to. Just speak into it. Thanks.
My name's Jan Driver.
Thank you, Jan.
I live at 619 Mountain Creek Road, Toowoomba, a landowner. January 3rd, we had a massive storm, as many of you know. We had many roadside trees come down and destroy our fences. There's one huge blue gum that remains on our land. I've spoken to the Shire on several occasions. I've sent photographs, and so far it has not been removed. Now, my question is the Alpine Shire responsible for roadside trees? If so, when will they remove it from our property and allow us access to our paddock and to be able to fix our fence?
Thank you, Jan. Who would answer? Yeah, I think that would be Mr. Rees, Director of Assets, to answer that one. If you have an answer now, otherwise, could we get... Do you have an answer for that, or do you need to get back to Mr. Driver?
Thank you, Jan. I think there's some information there that I'd need to get a little bit more context from, and then happy to engage with you and resolve the issue once I can understand a little bit more about the exact circumstances. But apologies if there's been a delay and
All right. Jan, would you like to... can we get somebody just to get Jan's phone number and email address, please? Yep. Thank you, Jan. Yep. Thanks very much. Gentleman out here. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you very much for reviewing the tenders. It looked like it was pretty comprehensive, so kudos to you all. It's my first time speaking here. I'm going to be really short, well, as short as I can. I've just come back from Medina.
Yep, certainly.
And this is about mountain biking.
No, I realise it's about mountain biking, which is good. This is not a grandstand situation. Usually it's a question time.
Yep.
You will have 2 questions. Could you state your name first, please?
Rob Moss.
Thank you,
from
Rob.
Bright.
Thank you.
Question number 1.
Yep.
In the contracts, will you be adding in any service level agreements for buses, the shuttle service, and the wait times for mountain bikers?
Certainly. Question 1. Question 2.
Are there any provisions in the contracts to hire the local staff?
Certainly. These are questions councillors have asked as well. Mr. Rees, do you have answers to those?
in terms of SLAs and wait times, I think that's something that we'll need to work through with whoever is appointed. And I think the sense of the objective here is to ensure that there is, community awareness, customer service, to create, I guess, the ultimate vision for the park over time. And so there'll be an ongoing process of continuous improvement, customer feedback, and looking at what can be done to make things better. It probably is premature to start making any assertions around commitments to what that would look like, but I'm confident that it'll be factored into how the contract is administered and ensure that customer feedback is taken on board.
I think the time is now to put that into the contract before a
Definitely.
5-year agreement is accepted.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Certainly. I'll take Jim first. Thanks. Sue? It's on. It's on.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Crebin, just a local enthusiast. As the present councillors weren't in existence when the Shire started helping us with a track from Mount Beauty to Wonga, and took great aerial photos. This was in 2007. 2010, the reason I'm here is I'd like an update of what's happening, but I thought I'd let you know the history of the track endeavours down the valley. In 2010,
Jim, did you just want an update on where the track is at the moment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I thought, a bit of history. 2010, the whole plan was scuppered by the Lord Mayor, Peter Roper, who said that was a stupid idea, and as a short-term measure, we'd make a track from Pebble Beach out to Dams Road.
Certainly.
14 years ago
Yep.
is a short-term measure in...
Understand. All right.
Where are we at?
Thank you. Mr. Rees?
Thanks very much, Jim, for your question. I think, the opportunities to expand the trail network is a real opportunity to enhance the amenity of the area. As you may be aware, a year or two ago, we actually did the scoping and alignment for that extension from Pebble Beach to Dams Road, and then from Dams Road up towards Mermaid's Pool. And we did some woody weed clearance to try and get ahead of the curve, because there was funding opportunities available at the time, which we applied for. Unfortunately, we were not successful with those. However, we have a great aspiration to follow through, and every time we relook at funding opportunities, we consider, does this project meet the criteria? But right at this point in time, we haven't managed to thread the needle, but it's high up on our list of opportunities that are ready to go for construction.
Thank you, Jim. Any further to that? I'm sure that Alan would like to be in touch with you if you'd like some more information on that as well. All right. Sue?
Sue Ryder from Toowoomba. I have two questions. The first one relates to Mount Wormatong, and it's in two parts.
Mhm.
And John's just...
So that's how you get more questions, right?
No. Mount Wormatong is all the spoil from the landslip. And I'm just wondering, does it belong to the federal government, state government, or to council? And the second part of the question is, depending on who owns it, federal or state, will they be leasing Wormatong Reserve to store the material? Or if it belongs to council, will you be selling it, using it, or just let it go to vegetation?
Okay. Shall we answer that question first? Those questions? Are you right with that, Mr. Rees, or is this a Mr. Jeremy one?
Rees, I think.
Mr. Rees, go for it.
Probably just a clarification, Sue, thanks for your question. Are you talking about the Wormatong pit site?
The spoil in the pit,
Yes,
which is now like a mountain.
yes.
Yeah.
Right, so now I'm with you. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
of the location. So council has ownership of part of that site, and Parks Victoria have got ownership of another part of the site on the Streamside Reserve. We're in conversations with Parks to see whether we can work together to consolidate that under council's auspices of management, and then rehabilitate that site as far as possible and use the raised area now as a hard stand area, as a bit of a staging post for council operations and also for some of Parks Victoria's requirements. So we're kind of in conversations to get to that point. And the idea would be to have a one-way road that sort of manages traffic a little bit more effectively. But we just need to work out how the access to that Streamside Reserve will be handled and sort of sedimentation management and things like that. But the end game is to bring it under council's responsibility.
So council will own the spoil.
Yes, who owns the spoil? That was the other
Yeah,
question.
we would own the spoil.
Yeah. Right.
And the second question
Second
relates to Frida's Lane. I'm just wondering what council's doing about the state of Frida's Lane. Are you going to continue to try and get government funding under storm and emergency relief to clean it up? Or are you going to ask the local brigade to burn it? Because there's a lot of material in Frida's Lane.
Yeah, probably a little bit like the question about the gum tree. I'll need to come back to you on that, Sue, in terms of what the exact plans are. I don't have an answer for you straight away. So I'll take that on notice if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like you can't see me behind this. My name's Sonia from Wandi, and I would just like an answer to Rob Moss's second question. I think it got skipped in his enthusiasm about the possibility of employment at the park for existing staff there.
Certainly. My quick answer to that, but I'm not involved with the contract, was that councillors have asked the same question of the officers. So, Mr. Rees, could you answer more to that question, please?
Yes, thanks. And thanks. I apologise for not answering that question earlier. At the end of the day, we always encourage our suppliers to hire local wherever we can. And we work together with them and assist them where we can with putting them in touch with opportunities and people that we know. However, at the end of the day, it is a private business and it's difficult for us to mandate who they employ and what their employment conditions are. However, throughout the tender process, our clear expectation is to build a local capability. However, in order to mobilise, particularly at the beginning of taking on an undertaking like this, there may be a need for supplementing capacity from other operations or other locations to get things up and running, and then with the transition to a local workforce would be our ideal outcome.
Does that totally answer your question?
There is a contract you're about to write where you can stipulate a percentage of local hires. This is what I'm trying to get at.
Sure, I'm not sure that we can actually stipulate that.
It's the power you have in the contract. It's the power that you have. You can give it to them.
Certainly, and they, as has happened in the past, they can comply with that contract for 1 or 2 weeks and then gradually drop hours, which has happened in the past with other contracts where we've tried this. And so then they employ who they wish to anyway. So that's the nature of private industry, private business. No, not necessarily, because they have employed them. You can't stipulate how long you've got to employ them for. Yeah. I understand exactly why you're asking this and where you're going with it. And it's a question, as I said, that councillors are always asking the council officers, if this is coming in and there's already a local supplier here, then can we stipulate? We can stipulate, we can ask, we can encourage. That's what we can do, apparently. So that I believe that's what the officers will be doing when they form this contract.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Sonia. I had one out the back here somewhere. Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Two parts. One question.
Your microphones should be there.
Hello.
Yep.
It's in two parts, but it's only one question. Mr. Rees mentioned the weighting process on the KPIs and the thoroughness in terms of the 3 bids.
Yes.
What weighting, question one, what weighting did you put on one of the bids which was based on a social enterprise?
Yep.
And the other 2 weren't? And the second question, part 2 of that question is, what weighting from KPIs did you place on the community pledges in the order of $250,000
Sure.
from one of the bids?
Okay. Mr. Rees.
Thanks for your question. So the criteria does not provide any weighting for whether you're a social enterprise or not. The request for any tenderers was to submit their tenders based on the criteria that were published. So social enterprise wasn't the criteria that was assessed. And I didn't quite understand the second question, I'm afraid, if you could repeat that.
Well, I think
You've answered the second one, I think.
you answered my question by saying, if I may, that it was not part of the criteria. So was it a non-conforming bid, the social enterprise? And have we missed an opportunity, a great opportunity here, by simply dismissing that initiative of a social enterprise based in Bright, solely for the community of our area, and in reinvesting into our area? That's the fundamental question. So I understand what you've just said.
Okay.
What I was specifically asking, in a non-conforming bid, if that was the case, what further efforts would council have made to put weight against a social enterprise, or in support, or not supporting a social enterprise?
Can you answer the question, Mr. Rees, or not?
Well, I guess the criteria are published in advance of the tender process, and they were specifically created to attract the best possible operator for delivering the vision for the park. And so social enterprise wasn't part of the thinking. It was looking at the capability of the operators, and everyone had an equal opportunity to present their case, and that was assessed against the criteria.
So can I ask the simple question here, and Mr. Jeremy could probably answer this as well. Is this a learning experience where social enterprise in the future may become more prevalent in tendering for some of the things that council does? And if that is the case, would council then look at social enterprise under any different light?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm afraid I'd have to take that on notice. It's not something that has come up as a model that's really been tested in my experience. So I guess we'll take that on notice and consider it as part of our
certainly, it may be just something for a bit of something that takes a little bit more intuitive thinking. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Mr. Dyer. Mr. Dyer, are your questions relevant to tonight's agenda?
Yes, no.
Thank you.
Just for the record too, I'll just mention why I have this here.
Certainly.
I went into the Wangaratta police station about 12 years ago with a helmet and said to the local police in Wangaratta that there's no criminal content whatsoever. It's all political. Suit and helmet, especially when it comes to domestic violence. Everybody keeps their hands to themselves. I actually went to Parliament House in Canberra about 6 weeks ago and actually wore the suit in Parliament House.
Thank you,
Went
Mr.
over to
Dyer.
the High Court and said, with 2 security guards, federal police beside me, and I said at the end, if there's any more domestic violence in Canberra, tell them I'll be back. Now, the questions I have tonight.
Yes, Mr. Dyer.
The first one is the trees. I believe I had a registered male.
The trees.
The trees around Myrtleford, I've been stating for the last...
They're not on the agenda tonight, Mr Dyer.
Well, it doesn't have to be on the agenda.
It does
Mr.
have to be
Mayor.
on the agenda. If you read the governance rules for question time...
That's government rules, is it?
No, it's governance rules.
Governance.
Our governance rules.
The Shire's government rules?
Exactly.
Not
That's
the
how,
state
that's how we conduct these meetings, Mr Dyer. If
Oh.
you wish to be part of this meeting, then you abide by the governance rules.
Well, Mr Mayor, I got this letter given to me tonight.
Correct?
That's at the Shire meeting.
Correct?
Now, it's asked for trees in Myrtleford. What trees have been cut down? I've been stating since Christmas that I believe that the trees are as bad as what happened in 1964 when the Bright Shire came into Myrtleford and cut all the palm trees down in the main street. There's been about 20 to 30 trees cut down
So
since
your
Christmas.
question... Look,
My question
let's
is-
get to your question.
My question is, can I have a copy of all the photographs and paperwork on each tree since Christmas as to the reason why they've been cut down?
What would you do with that and what outcome would you achieve?
Well, I'm talking about accountability. I don't use any accountability. Hang on, I'm
To
talking.
whom? To whom? No, it is not your meeting. I am
No,
sorry.
it's not your meeting, but I have every right to talk, and you're not supposed to talk over me.
Yes, I am. I can stop you
Oh, you
talking
can.
if I wish.
Are you going to bang your hammer again?
No, I won't bang your hand. If you like that, no, I'll ring the bell this time.
I ring the bell. You got
Yeah,
a bell
okay.
instead of hammer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like a copy.
That's
of
your
every
first
tree.
question.
My first question is, I'd like
Certainly.
a copy of every tree that has been cut down in, and I'm talking big trees, not
Okay,
small trees.
second question.
And the reason, no, I haven't finished. A copy, a photograph
Dyer.
of the trees and the documentation on which tree and why it was cut down. That's the first question.
Thank you. Second question.
The second question is, I believe last council meeting you made a statement that you've spoken to me on many occasions about the toilets.
Correct.
Yes. Well, I would like you to get it in writing as to what meeting we had and what was discussed with the toilets, because I don't think there was any meetings when it comes to the
Mr
toilets.
Dyer, you came into my... Look, sorry, folks, but
Yeah,
I,
no,
have
that's-
to, I have to finalise and I have to put a line under this now.
Okay.
Mr Dyer, you came into my workplace in Myrtleford once. You dragged me out. You took me across to the toilets. That was one time in particular that I can remember.
Yes.
So that is one of the times. How many times at council meetings have you mentioned toilets where I have been present? Those are the other times. How many times have we been through arbitration where you have brought this up and your person who has been with you at arbitration said, leave it, Mr Dyer, it is not the time to do this. Those are the countless times. Mr Dyer, I am drawing a line under this now. I will not accept questions from you again on those topics.
No, Mr Mayor, I'm sorry to say, but...
Would you like to turn Mr Dyer's microphone off, please?
Turn off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr Dyer. For those of you that do follow politics, you'll be very cognizant of the fact of local council meetings around the country being hijacked, shall we say. A local council meeting is to conduct the business of council. That is what we're here to do tonight. Question time, public questions, are a, what's the term? In the Alpine Shire, we allow public questions. A lot of local councils do not even have a public question time anymore, even written ones. So they're a privilege here, and I do not like to see them disabused. So let's put an end to that. Any other public questions tonight? I will take any more. Otherwise, the time is now 10 to 6, and we have spent the last 50 minutes in the first little bit of our meeting. No other questions? So thank you very much. We shall move on. Item 8, presentation of reports by officers. The Chief Executive Officer, Mr Will Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report relates to contracts approved under delegation by the CEO, and the recommendation of this report is that the capital project contracts approved under delegation by the CEO be noted, and there are two contracts there for noting. Both of them relate to works in Tawonga Crescent. One of them is the curb and channel replacement, and one is the road reconstruction works. Both of them are discrete contracts that were tendered separately, and both of them have been awarded to Stadelman Enterprises under my delegation.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Prime. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 8.2, 8.2.1, I believe Councillor Kelly has a conflict of this one and is leaving the room at 5:50. (8.2), Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, Murray to Mountain Rails Trail enhancements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm doing many things here this evening, so bear with me. So this report relates to the award of 3 contracts for the Murray to Mountains Rail Trail enhancements. And typically, reports are brought forward that exceed the CEO's delegated authority of $200,000. However, in this particular case, we've included a contract for $179,930 because these upgrades form part of a package. And in order to tell the whole story, it made sense to present them as a package. So by way of background, this relates to a fully funded project that has been many years in the making, going back to 2016. And in 2022, the state government awarded Tourism Northeast a lump sum of $8.5 million for these rail trail upgrades. Alpine Shire Council has their share of that, and these 3 contracts relate to the upgrade of the section of trail between Popunka and Bright, which is the busiest part of the rail trail by a long way. They were all run through public tender process, and I guess the important thing to note here is that it is Council's responsibility using this external funding to deliver these works, which will result in an upgrade to the existing bridge, so widening of the bridge to make it far safer, widening of the trail to make it, again, safer to ride on, and also to upgrade the drainage associated with that particular section of trail. So following consultation and public tendering, these tenders, as recommended for Council's consideration to award, are put forward.
So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble, Councillor Prime. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Director Rees. For those people that have been on the rail trail, especially the one between Bright and Popunka, it does need widening. So this is a great outcome and announcement from the Victorian State Government in regards to the funding. And I take Jim's point before about tracks and where we get the money from, and I think one of the answers was around about trying to find some funding. So, you know, in this case, the state government has funded these particular rail trails for the rural city of Wangaratta, Indigo Shire and Alpine Shire. We just need to find that grant money, Jim, to finish the track off, okay? But yes, it's a good outcome for that particular part of the rail trail and the additions with the bridges and the fixing up. Thank you.
Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, very happy to support this. We always love projects that are funded by someone else. Makes life a lot easier. Extremely popular. Got lots of friends who've ridden this and hear great things about it. So I think it's just a great addition to it. So happy to support.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I have a question of Mr Rees. It says in the paper that council is responsible for design. In one part of the trail, there's some quite large eucalypt trees and the trails that are wiped through. At what point in time is the design finalised, and is there consideration to maintain the trees, perhaps put some raised walkways or something along those lines? I know I'm getting into the weeds here, but just wanted to be sure that there's some really good thought going into the design of the upgrade.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Yes, so, you know, one of the challenges we have with upgrading any infrastructure is looking at existing conditions, and native vegetation is an important part of that. Wherever possible, the hierarchy is to, you know, avoid any impact or to see what we can do to mitigate that. I cannot comment on exactly what the detail of the design is, but that would have been factored in because we're required to go through that hierarchy of control before finalising.
So is the design completed, or is that still to come?
So these contracts are for design and construct, so that process will unfold once contracts are awarded, and all of these constraints and criteria then need to be looked at and will be considered.
Okay. Any other queries of Mr. Rees? Okay. Councillor Janus, any commentary?
I suppose, I don't know if it might be on notice, the question, but of the 8.5 million, how much was Alpine Shire allocated, do you recall?
Councillor Janus, I'll speculate here, but I think it is of the order of 2.5 million, 2.2 to 2.5.
And there's some artworks, I understand, have to be commissioned.
Correct. So there are two sort of phases to this project. One is the infrastructure upgrade, and the other part of the funding is to enhance the rail trail with some iconic artwork at key locations along the trail. In fact, the bridge at Popunka is one of those locations, and the other is at Eurobin Station. Details of those contracts for award, etc., will probably come in due course once the commissioning is underway.
Thank you. And I've got to congratulate Mr. Crebin there, who's constantly advocated for that trail from Dams Road back. Ever since I've been on council, Jim's been onto council to get that project done, and he's done lots of works there. And Jim, I'm equally disappointed in some of this, and the fact that the Lower Ovens area really hasn't benefited from this funding from Tourism Northeast. So I share your pain, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Before I just hand back to Councillor Keeble to wrap this one up, I'd just like to compliment the officers at the Alpine Shire for managing to get $1 million into some capital works that are dearly needed on this particular trail before we even look at putting a bit of artwork on it. It's more important that we can get people along it, then they can have a look and see what's there. So congratulations on that. Councillor Keeble, any final comment? No, thank you. Let's put this under the vote. Those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Cheers. Could you get Councillor Kelly back in? Councillor Kelly is returning to the room at 5:58. Okay, 8.2.2, Mountain View Children's Services Redevelopment Detailed Design. Mr. Rees, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to a contract variation for the detailed design of the upgrade or renewal of the Mountain View Children's Centre in Myrtleford. In 2021, Council was successful in receiving a grant of $150,000 from the Victorian School Building Authority under the Early Childhood Building Blocks grants to conduct a detailed design of the upgrade of this particular facility, which is well in need of that. And a contract was awarded in December for those design services. However, during the design development phase, it was identified that a preferred option would be an entire redevelopment of that facility. And so that has necessitated some additional work by the contract supplier, Spaces. And in order to complete those works, this report is recommending a variation of $64,000, which will then enable us to complete the detailed design. The recommendation is for Council to consider the award of that variation.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Councillor Keeble, Councillor Janus, Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. Having been on the Alpine Children's Services board a while ago, I'm no longer on the board, another councillor is, there was always a need to improve the Mountain View Children's centre facility. So it's great to see that that is on track, and I'm happy to support that variance to make sure that it's redeveloped correctly, because as we know, childcare centres, we're fortunate to have 3 in our shire, and I know there's many people that would probably like to get their children to some of the centres that can't. So if we can increase the capacity by redevelopment, that's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janus.
No, I think that it's a wise thing to do. We all know that if you start pulling apart an old building, the more you pull, the more you find it has to be repaired perhaps, and then so to take a good strategic look at the whole project and come up with a good result over that, it's worth that extra spend, thinking of it strategically long term.
Anybody wish to speak against this recommendation? No, you have a question? Certainly. Councillor Nicholas.
I'd just like to confirm that the extra funding comes from surplus in the budget. Or if it doesn't, where does it come from?
Thank you. To the vote, those in favour? Thank you. Sorry, you have a question. My apologies, you have a question?
Look,
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just one question, Mr. Rees. Has there been any, and I understand the, I guess, effectiveness of having a new facility rather than a renovated or expanded. Has there been any initial assessment on operational cost of the 2 options as well, or I guess what's ultimately going to be most achievable to comes to mind is my only question on this one.
So we know from our engagement that the optimal size of a childcare centre is about 160 places, and so the objective of this upgrade would be to increase the number of places to that optimum level. It mirrors the upgrade that was done in Bright a couple of years ago, and that really provides the sweet spot for operational efficiencies. And this design is the intent of this design is to achieve that, I guess, sweet spot in the operating efficiency.
Thank you.
Any commentary further? Councillor Keeble, okay. In that case, now let's put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. 8.2.3, Dinner Plane Bus Service, 2024 winter season. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. This report relates to a recommendation for Council to enter into a memorandum of understanding between Alpine Shire and Mount Hotham Alpine Resorts for the delivery of the Dinner Plane winter bus service. Last year, we did enter into a memorandum, and this was the first time that Mount Hotham actually delivered the service. It was extremely successful, well received. The roster met the needs of customers despite some initial mobilisation challenges that were experienced. However, on review of the actual operating expenses at the end of last season, it was determined that a small increase was required to have a cost-neutral impact for the delivery of the service. And so this report is recommending Council consider entering into this memorandum for a total value of $170,000, so $30,000 more than last year, and it would be funded from the Dinner Plane Reserve.
So moved.
Councillor
A
Keeble.
long time. This comes up every year, most years, for the last 16 years at least. I don't understand why why the Shire has a bus service, though I do understand, and it's definitely cost the Shire less over time, and I'm grateful that it's coming out of the Dinner Plane Reserve. And I know that the Shire's worked really closely with the different providers up there to come up with some solutions, and at the moment to continue that bus service for this winter, this will need to happen. So I get that, but at some stage, someone will come along that thinks they can run a bus service and make some money out of it.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor, and probably to respectfully acknowledge Councillor Keeble's views, I feel that actually local government can play a role in some public transport solutions. Clearly, this is a good solution in the sense that it eases the pressure on transport on those roads, it improves the safety on those roads, and also eases the pressure on parking. And when I look in our valleys on popular weekends and on popular events, I see the same opportunity, Mayor. I think supporting in some way a bus service can ease the pressure on our roads, ease the pressure on parking for people that need to do their usual Saturday routine while there's a festival going on. So I'm supportive of this, and also supportive of a broader look at what other ways can we, meet the needs of ratepayers, and rather than just building more car parks, maybe a bus solution for visitors is a good way to do that. Thank you.
I think you're preempting a conversation that may be had in the next couple of months, actually. Yes. Any other commentary on this? Yes, thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, another question. So there's a third player in all of this. We've talked about Mount Hotham Alpine Resort, and we've talked about Alpine Shire Council. We haven't mentioned Vale Resorts. Do they contribute at all to the bus service?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Yes, so the funding model is three ways to, I guess, recognise the benefits of all parties, and so everyone is contributing.
Thank you. My next question is about electrifying the bus service. They're pretty short hauls, so there'd be a pretty good chance to keep a battery charged enough. Has there been any discussion about that in any of the contract letting?
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. No, there hasn't been any discussion about electrification at this point in time yet.
Councillor Janus.
Thank you. It might not sound a lot of money, but it is ratepayers' money from Dinner Plain. Have the Mount Hotham Resort provided proof of their extra expenses?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Yes, at the end of the season, we conducted a review, and they were very transparent with the actual costs, because we had a view that there'd have to be a real justification if anything was to change, and they did demonstrate that. There was they did incur more costs than what we'd contributed in the last season.
Thank you. And I think as a safety measure, people travelling back and forward on those roads, particularly late at night, to have a competent driver on those roads is a safety issue that should be highly considered in having this service.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble. Anything further?
No, respectfully.
Thank you.
All good.
Excellent. In that case, let's put this to the vote. Those in favour of this increase to the bus service. Thank you. Let's keep the buses moving. Unanimous. 8.2.4. Regional Community Sports Infrastructure Fund applications update. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a report for noting to Council. The main reason why it's for noting is that during the last period, a number of funding opportunities have emerged, and with deadlines associated with them. In this particular case, two of them, one for the Mount Beauty cricket nets, and the other was for the Cundy Park playground, both of which are on Council's project pipeline. In particular, the cricket nets were identified as part of the Sport and Active Recreation Master Plan for Mount Beauty, and also met the criteria of the funding, and we were approached from an external party who has some experience in delivering these sorts of projects. Cundy Park is a park that is currently closed due to the need for significant maintenance and had been on the renewal program. For both of these, there is a co-contribution that would be required from council in the event that we were successful. For the Mount Beauty cricket nets, it's a 20,000 cash contribution with a 5,000 in kind, whereas Cundy Park is a much larger project. The design work that was done to support the application for the funding indicated about $1.25 million worth of work that would be needed to be done in the first phase. And based on the funding ratio, that would involve a $250,000 contribution of council money in the event that we were successful. So the recommendation is for council to note these applications, and if we are successful, we will then bring forward the funding agreements.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Prime, Councillor Nicholas.
A couple of things. So I think it's terrific that these areas are being looked at and that they we're applying for some money. If we are successful, we need to find $250,000. So again, I was going to be asking where that comes from. Would that be in the $5 million odd surplus that we're projecting at this point in time, or would we have a little sort of secret 250,000 stashed away in there that's sort of half earmarked and half not? So I guess that's one question. I'll ask the next one after that's answered. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Councillor. We haven't accounted for it in the budget, and it's not in the long-term financial plan. The $5 million surplus at the moment is more a timing surplus. We would have the funds if we didn't have a lot of excess costs coming through. But at the time, if this gets up, then we'll be able to consider it and build it into the long-term plan.
Perhaps through you, Mayor, if I could add some clarification. So our long-term financial plan makes a provision for capital upgrades and new capital projects of the order of $1.8 million a year. So essentially what we've got is a provision to deliver capital projects. If this was to be one of the funded projects, it would be then funded out of that allocation into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Much more reassured. The other question I had is for people who perhaps want their playground renewed, and anyone who might be listening or got some future dreams. What's the process for renewal of a playground?
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. So we are obliged to conduct an audit of our playgrounds on a regular basis from safety compliance, etc. That then informs a works program. And I guess there's a hierarchy of need based on the results of those assessments. Cundy Park is certainly at the top of that list just due to the condition. However, others are shortly behind, and we are continuously looking for funding opportunities for other upgrades, such as Howard Park, etc.
Thank you. It was Howard Park I was thinking of because lots of people talk to me about it.
Councillor Prime.
No issue from me. Happy to support this. What does in kind look like from us, Mr. Rees? Just behind the scenes paperwork and all that?
Yes, so largely administration, project management time. So I suppose costs that we incur, but are not directly eligible for the funding for cash, but we can submit estimates of those costs as part of the acquittal of the grant.
Yep. There is. No, I'm very happy to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Rees, just two questions on Cundy Park and related. The first one is, how long was it? You mentioned it's been closed. How long was it closed for? And I guess my second question is, are there any other sort of, playground facilities that are currently closed because they're not up to spec?
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. It has been closed since earlier in the year, so 2 or 3 months. And the main reason for it is safety related due to white ants in the actual structure. So we're currently investigating a short-term opportunity to remedy that just through maintenance activities, and we're obtaining estimates of what that will take. At this stage, I'm not familiar with any others that I'm aware of that are closed.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Rees.
Any other councillors got commentary on this? No? Then to the vote. It's just noting the applications for funding. So those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. 8.2.5, draft sport and active recreation master plans for Mount Beauty Sport and Education Precinct, Myrtleford Town Centre and Pioneer Park in Bright. Councillor Kelly has a conflict on the second lot of recommendations in this. Would you please sit through and listen through the first lot of recommendations? Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to a recommendation for Council to endorse the draft Sport and Active Recreation Master Plans for Myrtleford and Pioneer Park in Bright for public exhibition. This is the culmination of a lot of public consultation and engagement, obtaining an insight and understanding of user groups' aspirations for these specific areas. There's an extensive draft master plan that's been attached, which outlines what these projects could entail. And so following this level of engagement with the community, the draft is now ready for final community engagement and feedback. And the recommendation is for Council to endorse the plans as presented for that process. Once that's complete, then officers will consider and consolidate all of the feedback, finalise the drafts into a final draft, and then brought back to Council for endorsement.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Rees, and thank you very much to the staff of the Alpine Shire for doing so much hard work on these. We've seen them a number of times in briefing sessions. I know they've been backwards and forwards with the community, trying to iron out concerns before it goes to the public. And I've had a number of conversations with people who have spoken about the plans already, and they are comfortable for them to go to get further community feedback. So I really look forward to seeing that community feedback and seeing how people think the plans fit what they see their community needing. And I urge people to have a look at those drafts and provide feedback.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Matt. I concur with Councillor Nicholas. A lot of work and consultation and engagement, and certainly we've had a lot of briefing on this. Mr. Rees, just a question on the tenure and the land of these two sites. Am I right in thinking both of these reserves are state Crown land and Alpine Shire is the Committee of Management for both of these reserves?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Land management is a complex matter. So in the case of Bright, the Pioneer Park precinct is Crown land and Council is the Committee of Management. And then there are a range of community groups that then occupy various areas of that reserve. In the case of Myrtleford, it's a bit of a mixed bag. In some cases, it's Crown land and Council's the Committee of Management, because there's a range of different precincts, if you like, scattered around Myrtleford. Each of them has their own land management structure. In some cases, the community group is the Committee of Management. In other cases, Council is. And we're also looking to collaborate with other landowners to optimise the use of open spaces. So in short, in Pioneer Park, yes, it's Crown land, Council's the Committee of Management. In Myrtleford, there's a range of different constructs, depending on the site.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other queries, questions? Yes, certainly. Councillor Janus.
Just for the public's help, how is the best way that people can engage with making comment on these plans? Is it through the portal Engage Alpine, or is not everyone can necessarily have access to getting up to the office or anywhere to make comment? But a new format within the council's social media, Engage Alpine, I think it's called, gives you all the different areas that you can comment on, and it's quite an easy portal to use, I understand.
Thank you, Councillor Janis. Yes, so there will be a range of opportunities and channels for the community to provide their feedback. Ideally, if it's possible to use the Engage Alpine platform, that really provides a great, efficient place to provide that feedback. And what we will be doing is we're consolidating the feedback, and where we see patterns, we'll be putting in frequently asked questions and sort of providing a bit more of a, I guess, a summarized view. That's one channel. However, there will be hard copies available at council offices, libraries, visitor information centres. There will also be face-to-face engagements with community groups. So there'll be a range of opportunities, and that'll be well communicated through our normal channels and word of mouth, Facebook, etc. So we'll look to engage as broadly as possible. Most groups have already been engaged with as is in the sort of lead up to this. So there'll be some ongoing discussions to refine the designs based on further input.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. I'll just point out as well that one of the communication channels is the local paper. The communications has changed slightly. In the past, Alpine Shire Communications team have utilised the back pages, the classified ads a lot, and with the occasional one up the front. I think they're going now to a contract whereby every fortnight there will be a half page in the front part of the paper which will have a lot of this information in it as to what surveys are out there and where to contact and who you wish to contact. And also will advertise, as I pointed out earlier, these ways in which the general public can access information from Alpine Shire or have interaction with other officers or myself with these individual CEO, mayor pop-ups held once a month. So all that information will be on those pages. Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, any further?
No.
Thank you. To the vote then on the first recommendations, which are to do with the master plans for Myrtleford Town Centre and Pioneer Park in Bright. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. The time is now 6:23. Councillor Kelly will leave the room. Sorry, Councillor Kelly, did you want to just say why you...
Yeah, I did mention up front, so conflict of interest on this particular item relates to, so the draft recreation plan has a proposal involving the Mount Beauty regulating pondage, which is part of the Kiwa hydroelectric scheme, which is owned and operated by my employer, AGL.
Thank you. Still leaving at 6:23. Okay, the recommendation in this instance, I'd assume, Mr. Rees, that the recommendation is basically the same. It's out for public consultation and basically relates to just the Mount Beauty Sport and Education Precinct. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Janis. Councillor Prime. Any further commentary, or did we get most of the questions out earlier? Thank you. In that case, those in favour? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. You can get Councillor Kelly back in at 6:24. (8.2.6) Draft Community Energy Prospectus Executive Summary. Mr. Rees. Oh, sorry, 8.2.6. Yeah, Councillor Kelly is leaving again at 6:24. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to, again, a recommendation to Council to endorse a draft Community Energy Prospectus Executive Summary to be placed on public exhibition for 28 days to gain further public and community feedback, which will then be used and considered for a final draft, which will be brought back to Council. In particular, this relates to I guess, a prospectus of detailed design and business models for community batteries at 5 sites and smaller scale energy nodes at additional 5 sites, so 10 sites in total. These sites have been chosen based on an analysis of space availability for on-site solar battery existing electrical infrastructure and grid connection. So there's a range of criteria that have been used to determine which sites of council buildings are actually suitable and appropriate, which has resulted in the identification of those 10 sites. What this prospectus does is it provides an opportunity for the potential development of community energy solutions. And 2 models have been identified as part of this. It's quite a complex, moving area of energy at the moment. We're in a period of around about a 2-year pilot that government is funding to determine the viability of this approach as a source of energy. And so the objective of this prospectus is to enable council to be eligible for applying for funding for the installation of these to test the model. And as presented, a lot of work has gone into doing the analysis. We've streamlined it down to 10 sites and recommend that council endorse this executive summary for further community engagement that will enable us to be ready for funding applications. I think an issue to be aware of with this particular pilot is that the viability of these models really depends on grant funding for the infrastructure to establish it and actually get the installation up and running. So the business model really is being tested at the moment, and this work that council has invested in puts us in the game and a participant in this market to determine opportunities for our community.
So moved.
Thank you. That was Councillor Nicholas. Yep. And seconded?
Oh, I second.
Councillor Keeble? Right. That's all right. Councillor Keeble?
I think having a draft community energy prospects out there for public exhibition, I guess I'm just imploring the community to have a read of that particular document and provide feedback. It's good to see the 10 places in regards to, most of it is in regards to our shelters in place. So at times of resilience when we need that power, if there was no power in the grid. Yeah, I just recommend that people get on and have a look at the document and provide feedback. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas?
I just wanted to point out a couple of things, or sort of vaguely asking a question or statement, I'm not sure. Dot point in background, dot point 1 says deliver locally generated renewable energy to local communities. And I just wanted to clarify that that's if you are subscribed or if you buy your power through Indigo Power, you would be able to access that in an accounting system. But other than that, it's just energy being used by the building that we'd be talking about. Yep. Thank you. And then my other question is around the EV charging. I know that it's still a long way down the track if it ever happens at all, but if we ended up getting some funding for EV charging, would those sites then be prioritised? Or would it, is that too hard to answer because it's too far in the future?
I think that in essence it is difficult to anticipate what those opportunities will be. The fact that we've actually done this work puts us in a good position to be in the funding environment with credibility to be able to look at those seriously and then identify delivery and operating models.
So one more question about the EV charging. So they would be fast chargers or like 3-phase capable, or would they be trickling?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I'm afraid that's probably a level of detail that has not yet been resolved.
I probably should have asked at the briefing. Anyway.
But again, I think it comes down to those funding opportunities and what's ideal with those sites, what infrastructure is existing in place or what needs to be installed. Well, that'll determine the ultimate solution.
Thank you. Other than that, I just want to really talk it up that I think it's fantastic that we're finally getting out in the public space with some attempts to put some battery storage and build our own resilience. It's great.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Commentary, Councillor Prime, Councillor Janus. Councillor Keeble, anything further? No. Those in favour, please. Thank you. That has been unanimous as well. I'm just having a look, actually. Health and safety, no, I don't think so. Councillor Kelly will rejoin the meeting at 8:30.
6:30.
Sorry, 6:30. Sorry, I'm 2 hours ahead.
It's Fiji.
8.2.7, health and safety policy. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to a recommendation for Council to adopt the updated health and safety policy. I guess a little bit of background here is relevant. I think it's really important to note that Council is committed to providing and maintaining a safe and healthy environment and culture for all persons associated with its operations, which includes employees, contractors, volunteers, residents and visitors, and all areas of work and community spaces. I think it's worthwhile to note that in 2023, during the restructure, it was identified how important occupational health and safety is to us as an organisation, and so a dedicated officer role was created and filled subsequently, and that has led to a significant increase in the vibrancy of the health and safety culture within the organisation. We've re-established the Health and Safety Committee. We've got designated working groups. We're now reporting on our statistics in terms of incidents, near misses, and the like, and taking appropriate corrective actions, doing assessments and inspections of our premises on a regular basis, and tracking those actions, which I feel is a really positive step in the right direction in terms of the environment that we're creating for everyone that engages in our spaces. And so, following review of the policy, some minor adjustments were made to bring it in line with contemporary legislation, and so this report recommends revoking the old one and for Council to consider adopting version 6.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Mover and seconder. Councillor Janus, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Janus.
I think we all understand the importance of health and safety in the workplace in particular, but also at home, and it includes all contractors and visitors to our sites as well, which I'm pleased to hear. So, look, it's a no-brainer. You have to have a good health and safety policy, and I look forward to perhaps a statistical report for the Audit and Risk Committee I think that's next month, on the 17th. So to see what our statistics are flowing like.
That's what I was going to say. But I am really glad to hear that there's already an increase in reporting and investigation, and it's terrific that there's a dedicated resource to help drive that. And yes, I look forward to yet even further improved statistics.
Just a further comment to that. That's what I was going to say too. But that reporting to the Audit and Risk Committee, is there also a mandatory reporting to the state government or not?
Thank you, Mayor. So mandatory reporting is governed by WorkSafe, and that depends on the nature of the incident.
Right.
And so that really is the trigger. Depending on the nature of the incident, we need to make those reports known. There's no requirement to report anything else. But for good governance and general good best practice, we now report on a weekly basis to the management team and then to the Audit and Risk Committee, and obviously those updates to councillors at briefing sessions.
Yep, excellent. Thank you. Any other commentary? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Rees, just one question. Second only to people's health and safety is the environment's health and safety. Does Council have a standalone environment policy of a similar purpose?
Councillor Kelly, I'd have to take that on notice. I don't have the answer right off the top of my head.
Mr. Jeremy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer is no to that one.
Yep.
We don't.
Okay, any further commentary? No. In that case, let's put that to the vote, please. It's just a revoking of an old policy and the adoption of a new one. Thank you. Those in favour? It has been carried unanimously. 8.2.8, contract Mystic Park management operations and management. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to a recommendation to award a contract for the management, operation and maintenance of Mystic Park in Bright. I guess the founding of Mystic Park, the founding of Alpine Community Plantations, the journey that Mystic Park has been on, going back to 2013 when ACP was officially formed, but it definitely was active prior to that. And particularly the work that ACP have done to bring the park up to contemporary practices and meeting customer expectations has resulted in significant growth of the use of that park, the importance of it to our economy, particularly during the non-snow season, has resulted in us needing to look at a more contemporary operating model. And the unfortunate, I guess, success of the park, or the unfortunate implication of the success of the park is that the Alpine Community Plantations model just isn't really able to serve and realize the vision that the community has for this park. And so we had a point to recommend that we move to the next phase of the journey of Mystic, which has entailed an extensive public tender process, initially an expression of interest, and then followed by those submitters being invited to tender. As outlined earlier, the nature of the evaluation panel consisted of a number of external experts and community groups to bring the expertise to the table to enable us to evaluate those tenders. The criteria were wide-ranging and quite extensive. And the recommendation is for Council to consider the award of this contract to Elevation Parks following that extensive process.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kelly and Councillor Janus. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Rees, for the report. I've been reflecting on how we've arrived at this juncture and why this is a council decision for tonight. So I think from a tenure perspective, I don't know, I've talked about who owns the land already tonight. So this is state land. And my understanding is that HVP have a Crown lease. I don't know if it's 99 years or in perpetuity, but they've got a long lease there, long term then in perpetuity. And it was their view, I don't know, 18 months ago, something like that, that they didn't want the Alpine Community Plantation model to continue. From their perspective, it brought too much risk to their operation, which is around forestry. And effectively, they put out, I guess, an ultimatum in that sense, where if an alternative model wasn't arrived at, that they were walking away from allowing mountain biking on their land. That put Alpine Shire in a pretty unique position. Local governments aren't known for running recreational facilities like this, of this kind of nature. So ultimately, I think it was in November, there was a confidential item around Alpine Shire entering into is it called a sublease? We call it a sublease with HVP, Hancock Victorian Plantations. And my understanding is part of that sublease is that it's contingent on Alpine Shire firstly being held accountable to HVP for the operation of the site. And then we've got a clause in there that says if we can't find an operator or we're unsatisfied with the operation, we can hand our sublease back. Is that a simple way to summarise that?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yes, that summarises the situation pretty well. So it's a sub-licence.
Okay. So that gets us to, what, November last year? So then we've undertaken a process, and I think the report tonight is very brief, but when I reflect on the broader process here, my understanding is we firstly ran an expressions of interest and had 3 parties, and then we ran, a competitive tender process to arrive to where we're at tonight. I think we've touched on some of the criteria that were considered, and I think I do want to acknowledge there's been a huge amount of work by council officers, those volunteer groups or representative groups, the cycling club and others. I did want to clarify a point, and I think it was Rob, Mr. Moss brought that up around the tender process and who's reviewed in the process, and I did want to clarify that running a competitive process like this is like, whether it's for a waste collection or to run a caravan park, it's the council organisation that have the officers and the personnel that run the process. They'll lean on other subject matter experts to conduct that review, and then ultimately it comes to council for a decision. So I think I can speak for all the other councillors here that we haven't read a single submission by any of the bidders tonight. We're entirely reliant on the process and the expertise that's deployed through that. So I did want to clarify that. I think one of your questions kind of implied that, or suggested that we all played a role in reviewing the submissions, which I wanted to clear up is not the case. I think that Mr. Rees makes a good point where, once we've been through this process and we look at the current tenure and the risk that has been handed over to Alpine Shire Council, my take is we've got to strike the balance between what ratepayers reasonably expect of their shire and continuing what is has been an amazing facility for residents, an amazing facility for visitors that is continuing to grow and strike that balance. I have not much else further to add at this stage, other than I think it was very useful to step through some further detail during the question time earlier today, because I think there's been a lot more work than the report provides.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rees, did we have part of this tender process independently reviewed?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Yes, we did get some expert advice on the process to follow. And the reason for doing that was we realised that this is a complex matter. It was not the simple procurement of a supplier for the delivery of a service. And that advice is based on industry best practice for these types of contracts, so similar to the caravan park leasing process. And the recommendation was a 2-stepped, an expression of interest first, and then to invite a competitive tender process following that for those parties that submitted their expressions of interest.
Yes, thank you. I suppose I was on council when this facility first came to us to assist in funding to get it going, and I must say I was pretty hesitant, because I thought, well, what are council doing running mountain bike parks, as with caravan parks really, but it's not necessarily our core business. But I have seen a true economic opportunity for our area. Bright in particular, I suppose, have done the best out of it. But with the bike sporting area now expanding, I've also seen the uptake further in Myrtleford and in Bright. So there's spin-offs from all this. I don't necessarily say this is the best one in Australia, but I do know if I compare it to a play park, once someone gets onto that swing and has a good time on that, then they'll want to go to another one and have a crack on that one, and then they'll come back again. So, but I haven't read the, I haven't been part, as Councillor Kelly said, I don't think any of the councillors have been part of any of this process, and what we read before us tonight is what we've seen. And I'm happy that the process has been gone through extremely thoroughly, because there are a lot of side parts to this that need to be looked at. But I'm still confident that it is a good decision for our area. But I'm also happy to know that if this doesn't work, we have got a get out clause for council on this, and without putting our ratepayers into some sort of future debt. Not really. Could
Sorry,
you just
this-
put that through the mayor, please, sir?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
I thought we answered or touched on that earlier tonight when you said about local employment. And I think it was, yeah, Rob Moss, and then Sonia asked in particular. I don't think we can, I don't think I can answer that. No, and I don't know whether it's part of the contract or not. Yeah, it is concerning. I mean, Myrtleford faced that very situation with the mill 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 200 people could have been unemployed. So it's a private enterprise thing. I don't know whether we can actually mitigate that, but I don't think we can debate that particular thing here tonight. But thank you. It's a good point that you've made. It's something that will now be flagged and thought about when contractual things are being looked at. So thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, you have, sorry, Councillor Janus, finished?
Yes, thank you, and I apologise. I couldn't answer that. Only the mayor could have really done that, but I don't know. I just treat it as a business, and you know, if it falls over, it falls over, unfortunately. But and always there's always casualties in that. And I don't mean to be dismissive in that at all, because I know the people that work there are very proud of what they do and enjoy what they do.
Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you. So just to follow on from what Councillor Kelly said, yes, we have to have an operator. So we've had some discussion earlier about social enterprise, about the existing operator, about somebody new who has been involved in the park before. Further down in the paper, and there was something put up earlier about what the team, the working party assessed against was price, qualifications and previous performance, delivery, social and environmental. So there has been a really thorough assessment. However, we have seen some paperwork from that assessment which shows that the proposed tender, the proposal up there, the Elevation Parks, would have a very ambitious development program. And my concern, I've got a number of questions around it. One of them is they're very focused on gravity riding, and I'm wanting to be sure that their development program includes cross-country and particularly beginner, and not beginner going downhill, beginner learning how to ride a bike. That's question one.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So yes, you're correct. As part of the tender documentation pack, there is actually a trail development program that steps out, I guess, a combination of things. So the trail product itself, It also addresses the harvest schedule, particularly over the next 2 years, which will significantly impact the existing trail network. And the objective is to have a balanced product for customers of all capabilities and interest groups to enjoy. And continue to build on the work that ACP have done in recent times to bring the park up to speed and up to spec and trail maintenance in particular to ensure that it is a good experience. So a wide range. Obviously, Mystic has traditionally been a gravity-heavy type of park, but there is a combination of a range of trail options for visitors and residents to enjoy, and the signage improvements, I think, have improved that experience as well.
Thank you. My next question is around the proposal for, I can't remember what the numbers were, but doubling the visitor numbers in the first year or something along those lines, of incredibly rapid growth, and whether there was consideration about the supporting infrastructure that might be needed if that were to occur, given that we've already, when the Hero Trail went in, we've already, we suddenly got some issues that we didn't even think about and hadn't thought about. And the park is still in the same location, it's still really close to the township, and I know there's some work going ahead to try to make the shuttle turn around a different place, and that should help. But I just wanted to be sure that those considerations, the consequences of such growth and what the Alpine Shire might be therefore committed to, apart from just having the park run, have been considered.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Yes, they have been considered. And I guess in the clarification process, I suppose we carefully considered the reality of what's possible. It will be a balancing act. We've seen significant growth and interest in mountain biking, and I think as the product has improved over time due to the work that's gone in from all the volunteers and people involved, it has generated a momentum of its own. So that will need to be carefully managed. And that's part of working with a partner that is going to be responsive to what's practical.
Thank you. And my last question reflects what some people in the gallery have been asking about encouraging the elevation parks, if they are awarded the contract, depending how the vote goes tonight, to work with existing employees and contractors.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Yes, that is a clear expectation of ours, and it has been discussed during the whole tender process in terms of ensuring continuity wherever possible and using local capability and talent as part of the end result.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. Thanks for the questions, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Kelly raised some really good points in his initial discussion. The Mystic Park in regards to land tenure, I think, is something that we've discussed at length many times and had many briefings on, and it's certainly been a discussion. I'd like to thank Director Rees and all his staff for all the work that they have done, not just on the tender, but just all the briefings over the last many years in regards to Mystic Park, because it is a peculiar is not the right word. It's not common in regards to shires and relationships with land managers who have leases in running a facility, whether that's a caravan park or a mountain bike park or whatever it might be. So yeah, thank you for the work that you've done behind that. I'll leave it at that. Oh no, I'm going to thank the gallery for their questions and the people online who put their questions in. It shows that people are passionate about that area of the world.
Certainly are. Thank you, Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you everyone for making the trip over and submitting questions. Again, I think it just shows how much interest this has generated. I think Councillor Kelly gave a really nice timeline because it's quite confusing, I think, from the outside to look back over as to what exactly has happened over the last 18 months or so. And we've been kept abreast of it every step of the way. And I think all of us would like to see this succeed, but we know there's risks involved with that. And I feel like it's been a thorough enough process that there's a recommendation for the best candidate we've seen come out of it, and I do understand the pros and cons involved with that recommendation. Hasn't been an easy decision. I think something reassuring is a lot of the questions that come out of the gallery tonight are things that we've discussed amongst councillors, so I feel like it's nice to know that we've got our finger on the pulse with everything, and whether or not we come up with an answer that everyone's happy with, we can never do that, obviously, but it's nice to know that we're all discussing things we think are really important to the community. So I really appreciate the time and effort involved in this. I know it hasn't been straightforward. No, thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Back to you, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. And reflecting on the contribution, I'll take your guidance. Am I allowed to ask a couple of questions now of Mr. Rees?
Certainly are.
Terrific.
You're allowed 2 questions.
2, all right. It was going to be 3. So I guess I'll cut to the more legal, pointy end of what we're voting on tonight. The first one is contract duration. So in the report, it says that all the bidders had to submit a 5-year plan. Is the contract for 5 years?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So the contract is for a period of 5 years with an option to renew for a further 5 years. And this is due to the nature of the sub-licence that Council has with HVP. So we have a back-to-back mirroring of that sub-licence into the award of this contract.
Great, thank you. And how much area does this contract that we're voting on tonight, does that offer the entire sublease area or a subset of that? Because in the report, there's an acknowledgement of around 20,000 hectares of the whole site, but the mountain biking course being 350 hectares. What's the actual area that the successful operator will have access to?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. It is the 350 hectares. For clarification, the 2,000 hectare was linked to when ACP was initially created and had a much broader vision that really ended up only being realised in the Mystic Bowl. And so the constraint of where the activity really happens is what's been recommended for award here, which is the 350 hectares.
I'll wait see if the Mayor pulls me up. Just to clarify that one, so the council's sublease, is it the same 350 or do we have a greater footprint?
No, it is exactly the same.
Okay, right. And just lastly, mobilisation, effectively 60 days to mobilise. I see it mentioned in the report that a mobilisation plan was part of the assessment. Can you give us a flavour of if this operator is successful as proposed tonight, what's their 60-day plan? Just a flavour.
So I think the first thing is, we've got an expectation for operating at the 1st of July. However, we know that this is a tight timeline, and so we do have some leniency with ACP and HVP to have a slightly longer lead-in to provide that opportunity to get everything up and running. So there's a period of contract finalisation, which will really set the foundation. And then once that's been finalised, there's then the mobilisation of handovers, recruitment, getting the shuttling operation established in either a final form or an interim arrangement to ensure business continuity. There'll be the discussions with the existing operator in terms of how and where there might be opportunities for staff to be presented opportunities. Council is also in the process of recruiting a contract manager to ensure that we can administer the contract appropriately and support that contract. So there are multiple activities happening at the same time in order to present the best opportunity to meet that 1st of July timeline.
Thanks, Mr. Rees.
Councillor Kelly, I will give you a further right to reply because I didn't make comments before, but you touched on the ACP thing. My understanding is that HVP drew a line in the sand, which was last December, but thankfully you've been able to keep ACP in as still a committee of management since then, and you just basically mentioned then that there is a little bit of leeway. How much leeway do you think HVP will allow? Another 2 months, 3 months? Would we get another 6 months out of them or not?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the HVP's desire is to see progression, and so we've been able to demonstrate that with the thorough process, keeping all stakeholders engaged. They have, I guess, fed back to us that they've been supportive and impressed with the process, and therefore would be flexible to provide limited opportunity to extend if needed. We've also engaged with ACP to understand the volunteer organisation's appetite for some flexibility, and they've given us assurances that they will do everything they can to ensure an orderly handover.
So it prompts another question, and that is that if, depending on the outcome of this tonight, if the current operator within the park decided to just pack up sticks tomorrow, is there a plan B?
We have no indication of that being the case. However, if it were the case and we were unable to provide business continuity, in the sub-license agreement there is an option for council to close the park temporarily while mobilisation occurs, or a suitable operator is appointed.
Is appointed. Right. We wouldn't like the same situation as we had with our waste earlier this year. Thank you. Councillor Kelly, you do have a right of reply still.
No, nothing further to add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay then, so the recommendation is there. Could I have a show of hands, those in favour of that recommendation? Those against? That's fine. Certainly. Shall we mark down, please, those in favour? Those in favour again?
Division, please, Mayor.
In favour? There are 4 in favour, and we have 5 in favour. Those against? You have 6 in favour.
Sorry, I don't know when I'm supposed to put my hand up. I'm going against.
Okay, those in favour?
I thought you'd already counted them.
Thank you. Those against? Thank you very much. It has been carried. (8.3), the Acting Director of Customer and Community, Mr. Tony Cooper. Thank you. 8.3.1, Community Grant, Eventing and Event Funding Programs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's around a report that came out of the Victorian Auditor General's Office back in May 2022, which provided 11 recommendations on how councils could improve their control and management of local grants. Alpine has been running a long-term community grants program and a long-term event funding program, which these recommendations will now overlay in our assessment and application of those applications which will come in. For 2024, we're opening for applications from the 10th of May 2024 to the 16th of June 2024. The main recommendation that we're implementing at the moment is the recommendation that councillors remove themselves from the assessment process of the grant. There are further recommendations and they will be built into a grants policy or an updated grants policy that council will abide by.
Thank you, Mr Cooper. Could
So
I have a
moved.
mover and seconder? We've got a mover, Councillor Nicholas, seconded Councillor Prime. Councillor Nicholas.
Whilst I can see the sensibleness of removing councillors from the assessment process, I also think there's a potential loss of local knowledge and understanding, which is a pity. I guess that's all I want to say. I think it's a good idea, but I can see there's some negatives.
Yeah, there was a specific example included in the Vargo report where a councillor was involved in the assessment of a grant and did not declare a conflict of interest around the assessing of it, and that's where their recommendations come from. It was one of 7 councils that were assessed, so it wasn't everyone, but it was considered a general recommendation for councils to look at.
And it's always been hard to work out how much a conflict you've got. If your kid rides a horse, for instance.
Yes.
Can you make a decision about anything? Anyway.
Councillor Prime.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Nicholas on this one. I see the reasoning behind it and I see how it's supposed to keep everything fair, but yeah, it is a shame. But no, I totally see where it's coming from.
One comment, and that is because of this, when it does come time for councillors to vote on this at a council meeting, should they then not have to declare conflicts of interest if one of the items within the funding is something that they may be involved in? Or we haven't gone down the track that far yet?
It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Right.
But it does create that quandary about whether you just openly do declare that and still go through the process because councillors weren't involved in the assessment and it's really around recommendations. If councillors were to accept all the recommendations as they were presented, then you would accept that it's probably...
Certainly. It just may be something we may need to look in as far as governance
I think
goes.
it's a very good question.
Good, thank you. Councillors, yes, thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I understand what the Auditor General's Office report is saying. I've been one of those councillors that have been on for a long time on community grants and event funding assessment panels. And sometimes we have enough community members that come along, sometimes we don't. It's often hard to get people into the room to have those conversations. I, for one, don't really support this recommendation personally. I think there's a lot to lose. I think a councillor has a duty to call on their conflict of interest, and I get that the Auditor General has, picked on one case, and there's strong governance rules around councillors who don't declare conflict of interest. That's been strengthened in the last little while. I think it'd be a shame not to have councillors on those committees. That's just my personal opinion.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. I think the only thing I would add here is that there's also an aspect of accountability, and that when decisions are made to award funding or otherwise, there's also accountability for making those decisions and putting those decisions onto community groups or, I think is not necessarily desirable. And, I think a rigorous conflict of interest process and a councillor, committing to the activities that they put their hand up for when they run for local government should suffice in these processes.
Any other commentary? Yes, Councillor Janus.
I agree with my fellow councillors. We have a job to do and we have to do it properly. Just because somebody has done the wrong thing or not completed their duties properly, shall we say, shouldn't necessarily mean the whole of councils bear the brunt of that. We're all involved in community one way or other, and as you point out, Mr Mayor, that if the final decision comes to us and we're sitting up there and it involves a group that we may or may not be involved in one way or the other, do we have to declare then a conflict of interest again? We as we sit on these panels, and as we've all done over the years, if it comes up, we declare a conflict and we leave the room while that decision is made amongst the other attendees. To me, it's some sort of, and we do, as Councillor Nicholas pointed out, we lose a lot of that local knowledge where we have that input about a particular group or a particular person because we are involved with the community. And I'm not comfortable with the recommendation.
Okay, for governance rules tonight, if I put this to the vote and nobody votes, it'll lapse. So it's probably relevant because these grants are coming up in about a month's time. Yes, certainly. Thank you, Sue. I.e. a councillor. Certainly. Look, I agree with you entirely, and I look around me and I know that the councillors sitting here have sat on those committees in the past, and there are community members on that. There's usually one from a Chamber of Commerce, one from somewhere else, and then there's a youth person as well. And thankfully, we haven't had fights, so to speak, but take your point and thank you for the commentary. So where was I going with that? Yes, sorry, governance rules about this. If I put this to the vote now and there is nobody voting on it, then this whole recommendation will lapse. If I put this to the vote and it is rejected, then we have to come up with another recommendation here and now. If I split these two recommendations, one is that we note the Victorian Auditor General's Office report to Parliament May 22. That's one thing, and we could note that. Then if we put item 2 as a separate issue and that got voted down, we'd then still have to, I think, have another motion.
I'd like to put a motion that we split the recommendations.
You want to split the recommendation? I will take that. So in that case, is there any further commentary on this?
Need a seconder?
Yeah, I do need a seconder. So I've got Councillor Prime for that. So Councillor Keeble, Councillor Prime. And the recommendation is that we split these two recommendations. Do we have any further commentary from any other councillors on this?
No, I think it's right to split the vote because one is very different to two. And yep.
Okay, then in that case, I put recommendation 1 that this council notes the Victorian Auditor General's Office report to Parliament in May 2022. Those in favour? Thank you. That has been unanimous. Recommendation 2 is that it supports the recommendation to exclude councillors from councillors' community grant program and event funding assessment panels. And as I put it out initially, if nobody votes on this, it'll just lapse. So can I put this to the floor, please? Those in favour? Thank you. Does that assume that there's so many against? And if that's the case, do we have to have another motion?
I don't think so. I think if it's against...
It just lapses?
Just lapses.
Thank you. Recommendation 2 has lapsed. Thank you for that discussion. Item 8.3.2, Community Engagement Policy Review. Councillor, sorry, thank you, Mr. Cooper, Acting Director of Corporate and Customer.
Thanks, thank you, Mayor. The community engagement policy was created in 2021. It's now timely for a review, and that's what's put before council to release the community engagement policy to the community for public comment. One of the main changes in the policy is the removal of council support for advocacy. I knew I was going to trip over that word.
So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
No, as read. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I'd just like to say, when I first had a look at it this time round, I thought it was a completely new policy because it was really good and up to date, and I think it's terrific, and I'm really glad that we're implementing it.
Good. We're waiting on community feedback on this one, so we're just basically releasing to the public anyway.
Yeah.
Certainly, any other? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one quick comment here, and I know it's going out for feedback. Section 323, there's a subsection there on when will council engage, and there's lots of reasons in there. We require input or feedback. Community can have an impact on a decision, or there's a high level of public interest. And I think a high level of public interest is something that is actually really important on as a reason to engage with the community. That interest may not be able to impact a decision in terms of the process that's underway, but engaging so people get further information on something that may have or has public interest is pretty important. So I think all those bullet points to me are or has this or has that rather than must or and has.
Good point. So if you are in the public and you are going to give some feedback, that's something that you can pick up on. Any other councillors? Councillor Keeble, any final? All good. Those in favour? Recommendations? Thank you. That is unanimous. If I'm starting to speak more quickly, it's getting later at night. 8.3.3, the borrowing policy. Recommendation. Thank you. Mr Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Council did not have a borrowing policy. I arrived in council in August last year, and it was identified as a gap in our financial policy toolbox, for want of another expression. So it was decided to develop a policy via referring to other councils' borrowing policies and pulling the best bits out of it. The intent of creating the policy was not for council to borrow funding in the current budget or in the proposed budget. For consideration, 3 items down. This is just about creating a firmer structure around our financial toolbox.
So moved.
Who is first? Councillor Janus and Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janus.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Note that there's no public submissions were received on this. However, it is good practice to have a policy in relation to this in order that, and the guidelines are quite clear on how and when we should borrow monies. Note that we paid out our last borrowings in July 2015, so we are in no debt at all with council. However, should strategically looking forward an opportunity arise whereby we meet the criteria and we have to borrow some money to do that, then we have a clear policy in place that our staff can refer to.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
No, just concur with Councillor Janus.
Okay, any other commentary from our accountants? No, thank you very much. Those in favour of this recommendation? Excellent, that's unanimous. 8.3.4, the draft budget 2024-25 community budget submission outcomes. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr Cooper.
You're going well. Thank you, Mayor. Council commenced a community budget submission process in mid-November last year, 2023, and it concluded very late in January this year. Ran for approximately 11 weeks, was community consultation. Council officers and councillors attended pop-ups, markets, libraries to interact with the community. By the end of the process, Council had received 28 budget submissions. Each of those submissions is within the report with recommendations from officers who are closest to the item that the community put forward as a submission. So I table that report for consideration by councillors.
Thank you. A lot to read through. Certainly, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Cooper and the team for running this process and preparing tonight's report. So, 28 submissions is a good number, I would say, across the group. It's maybe not as high as last year, but more than the year before, I think, is the way it has flowed. In the report, my insight is that most of the assessment to date is based on alignment with current or future projects and work program. And availability of resources, I think, is the other remark in the report. When I look to these submissions, you know, I start to think about criteria for assessing, and obviously there's some there around, you know, what can be accommodated and what's possibly deliverable. I guess some other criteria for me are, you know, which projects would bring the most benefit to residents, which projects would bring the most benefit to ratepayers, which ones have the best economic impact or other social impact or an environmental. And when I look at these ideas, you know, there's lots of good ones there, and some of them look like they can be accommodated in some way, shape or form in the forward plan. There's only one there that's listed for actual funding. And, you know, when I think about the $20,000 to the Mount Beauty Airport, I think about, well, that first potential criteria, the most benefit to residents, there's probably a pretty limited impact to most residents on that. Can you give any insight to why that one has been identified as in this draft approach? This one is let's fund it explicitly. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can comment on this one, because we've been discussing this with the Mount Beauty Airport Association for some time now. So we've upgraded the airport. The plant and equipment that the Mount Beauty Airport Management Association have on site is no longer adequate to service the larger area of grass that they need to maintain. We're supporting this purchase of a slasher because otherwise we believe that this maintenance is going to fall back to council.
Is the association contributing any? So they've got their own haulage tractor or whatever the case may be, or
so they're going to provide $24,000 towards the quoted cost of $44,000 from the funds in their account.
Okay. The next one for me, and I touched on it earlier, I think when I look at that list, there's been 2 submissions on feasibility work around transport, public transport, whether it's public transport or it's just transport solutions, I think is probably up for debate, but I guess I'm looking at those because they could be significant innovations, I think, for our increasingly congested areas and managing transport. Thank you.
Councillor Keeble.
Nothing further to add, thanks. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions from councillors? No, in that case, these are to be popped into the draft budget, and just it's a good read.
Just one, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
certainly,
Sorry.
Councillor Janus.
She's an old crusty, this one, and I'd really like to see something come up, and it is to do with the Mount Beauty Historical Society and the digitalisation, if I can say that word correctly, of their records. I don't know how many times they've made this presentation to council for some funding, and I would probably ask the officers to perhaps throw it up a bit more on the priority list, because I think it's got equal value as a mower. Oh. That's all
All right, we'll take that as a comment and something for the various committee that looked into this and came up with these recommendations to think about, I think. Thank you. That being the case, let's put the recommendations to the vote. Those in favour of it as it stands. Thank you. Unanimous. 8.3.5. The Dinner Plain Special Rate Public Notice of Proposed Declaration. Again, thank you. Mr Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a declaration around the special rate the council is proposing to propose on Dinner Plain.
So moved.
We apply a special rate.
Continue. It's okay.
Continue.
Continue.
We'll get
It's
some
okay.
more information, but thank you.
Continue.
Please continue, Mr Cooper.
We impose a special rate for Dinner Plain primarily because the service that we're looking to recoup the cost for is around the bus service that was on the agenda previously. Is a service that is specific for Dinner Plain, no other area across the Shire. And under Section 163 of the Local Government Act of 1989, we're permitted to impose a special rate when it's specific to the circumstances of a locality or an area. We're proposing to impose the special rate at 43% on commercial and industrial properties in Dinner Plain. That equates to the same rate that we would be applying to other commercial and industrial premises across the Shire.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Second, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble, any further
I do
queries?
apologise for jumping in.
No, I know why you did it.
We get this one every year. I do apologise. It's good to explain it. I won't go on any further. Thank you. It's good to put it out on notice. It's a requirement.
Councillor Nicholas.
I actually have a question on special rates, seeing as we're talking about a special rate for a winter bus. Could we put a special rate across another area or the whole Shire to run the bus service that Councillor Kelly alluded to in the last agenda item that's been put forward by community members?
It does sound like it could be, but I don't understand the Act. I'd need to reference that, whether it is specifically to a very general or a specific locale or Shire-wide for a specific thing.
Sure. I hadn't put my mind to it. I just thought, oh, look at that. Thanks.
I'll take that on notice.
Councillor Nichols, we used to have the special rate throughout the whole Shire, which was for tourism. And it wasn't specifically for any particular site. So I think without looking at the Act, whether it's changed, it's possible that it's not designated just for a single site.
Sure. Just thinking.
Any other queries? No, in that case, let's put this to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you, that is unanimous. 8.3.6, the draft 2024-25 budget report. Mr Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We're tabling the draft 24-25 budget for release to the public for feedback. Generally, from a rates perspective, the council, we're proposing, that the rates are increased by the cap that the Minister set in December 2023 at 2.75%. We've aimed to increase our expenditure to a minimal amount. However, in some situations, due to the cost blowout in things like insurance, we've had to exceed that cap or exceed inflation. We are planning on throwing an operating surplus of around $5 million for this year, and we have, as another highlight, a capitals program worth around $15.4 million.
So moved.
Councillor Keeble, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Keeble.
The budget each year, the draft budget, and then the budget that's eventually passed is, for councillors, it's one of the most important bits of work and documents that we have every year because it's what drives the next 12 months and where money goes and what's spent on. And, there is I'm not going to say there's plenty of money, but there's an, you know, it's about prioritising when where we put money to get projects or however that is. So it's a really important process, annual process. It's one of our as councillors, the things that we need to be across. I urge all the public who are here and online and who aren't, that get on and have a look at the draft budget, because it does drive a lot of things. And I can see that it invites submissions from the public, so get along. Put your hand up, we'll have a look.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, only to add, the document also has future year projections, and I think that's pretty useful for seeing what the outlook is in terms of applying the current rate cap, the current expected cost of services going forward, and therefore, you know, what is the surplus operating cash flow that we can then invest back into our assets, into our facilities. It's heading towards a break-even kind of story over those years, and you'll also see in there that we remain highly reliant on other government grants from other levels of government, both federal and state, primarily federal, though I might add, from an operational perspective to make the books balance.
Query for you, Mr. Cooper. Was it actually hard to produce a budget with the rate cap involved?
Yes, it was, Mayor. There were some added complications where the Minister, just before Christmas, decided to change the way waste services and charges could be utilised. We got a bit of a reprieve. We got a one-year reprieve on that, notified in February. Other than that, we would have had to have found another $500,000, $500,000 in the budget to cover something that a change in definition would have meant we couldn't charge through that. It is difficult every year. The CPI or the inflation rate is running higher than the cap. Last week, the new rate was 3.6% to the year. And we're able to charge an increase of 2.75% across the rate base, which is not our full revenue base as well.
Sure. So for the average ratepayer, when they get their rate bill, some may see a rate increase, some may see a rate decrease.
Yep.
Is it fair to ask them then to simply look at what the rate in the dollar they are going to be paying, because we are using CIB? And I would think that they would see a reduction in the rate in the dollar that they're actually paying because of the increases that we've had in their land values and house values.
Yeah, the rates tables in the draft budget will be updated for the final. We're working off the figures from last year because we still haven't received the updated figures, but I would expect that would be the case, that you would see a decrease in the rate in the dollar.
Thank you. Any other councillors have questions?
Yep.
Yes, certainly. Councillor Nicholas.
I'm at the fees and charges dot points. I understand there's a fee being introduced for real estate signs on public land.
Yes.
Which isn't listed here. Are real estate agents being engaged so that they understand there is a change?
I would have to take that on notice.
Sure. I think they should be, or it should be listed, one or the other.
Yes.
Thanks. And any other people who might be affected by the fees and charges, unless it's general.
Okay. Back to you, Councillor Keeble. Any further? Okay then. This, as we've said, is the draft budget report, and it gives public notice of the presentation of it. So, those in favour? Thank you. It is unanimous. That is the conclusion of that part of the meeting. Item 9, the informal meeting of councillors. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
Second.
Councillor Keeble. Those in favour? Carried unanimous. Item 10, presentations of report by delegates. Anything to report tonight? No. General business, starting from my right. Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas.
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on the Wandi Nut Festival again. My first volunteer spot was the morning sitting near some rubbish bins. There was no FOGO, and I wondered how an event can get hold of FOGO. And the other thing that bothered me immensely is because one of my next volunteer shift was in the Dish Pig. Hardly any of the vendors could or would use plates. There was cups worked for coffee, but I've been racking my brains about how we can get vendors to use non-single-use containers.
Are they using bamboo or recyclable?
There was some cardboard, there was some polystyrene still. I did speak to some of them, and they can't fit them in the caravans, and they can't risk breaking. And so there's all sorts of things around it. But if anybody's got any ideas, please share them.
Melanie.
Mr Mayor, I withdraw my last comment. I do have one.
You do have some general business, please.
Thank you. It's in relation to events. The La Fiera Festival is in Myrtleford on the 18th and 19th of this month, and Alpine Shire officers are trialling the FOGO bins at that event. And the local Landcare have again been employed as bin monitors. So I look forward to seeing how that actually goes. And I think the event organisers there do have some specifics to their vendors in relation to the type of utensils that they can provide.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, anything further? No. Okay. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to acknowledge, it's terrific for the council to be able to meet in most of our, or many of our locations through the course of the year, and an Ovens Valley issue was well represented in the gallery today here in the Kiewa Valley, and also to acknowledge the employees and team members that help make the technology and these alternative locations work well. So thank you.
Well said. Councillor Prime.
I'd love to add to the bin conversation tonight. We actually tried, I'm on the Dedarang Race Club committee, and we made a real effort. It's not involving FOGO, but a real effort involving mixing, we've got a massive issue with contamination, which, as you can see, people get a few drinks in them and a bit of sunshine, and they couldn't care less where their rubbish goes. They're contaminated themselves. But one of the committee members made a real effort this year and employed some volunteers, and just in regards to separating recycling from waste made a huge difference. But I will admit that the man hours involved in organising that and throughout the day is just massive. So I don't know the answer. Anyway, but I just want to say congratulations. I only found out this week just how successful it had been. So it just requires effort from someone, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I think there were 2 public meetings in the last fortnight on the landslide, the Bogon landslide. One was at Falls Creek and one was in Mount Beauty. My question is, and I've raised it before, at some stage the trucks with the dirt will be finished with driving around Embankment Drive and through the streets of Mount Beauty. In regards to the roads getting repaired, just how is the Shire having conversations in regards to that? That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. We are in touch with Major Roads Projects Victoria. The exact extent and timing is still to be determined, and also the scope of work. So I think premature to be able to comment on exactly what will unfold, but
that's okay. But
engaged.
the discussion is there's a pathway there, and just for the record, that they're hoping to have the road open to 2 lanes by the end of May. So that would be terrific. So if you haven't
prior to opening weekend, I think.
Prior to opening weekend, that's a hope. My other one was the windstorm, the storms that we had here early January. there was a pile of wood to be cut up for firewood. Where's that at the moment? Does anyone know? At one stage, the public were going to be known that they could come and grab that wood.
I'll have to take that on notice, Councillor, and report back.
Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Mr CEO, Mr Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So particularly given that we're in the Keilor Valley, I think it's important to give an update on the Toowoomba South amenities. We've actually got some really positive news. We're one signature away from having the contract of sale and the draft plan of subdivision finalised. And that signature is mine, so the vendors have signed. So it's with me now to finish it off. So in the very near future, we'll be at a point where we have a contract of sale, we have a plan of subdivision, it can be lodged and we can move the project forward. Excellent. Which is really good news. I'm sure the Kiewa Valley residents will be very happy to hear that.
Mayor, I did have another question, if I may.
Questions?
Senators are over here. The question is probably to Will Jeremy in regards to North East Waters. Do you know where their decision is, their final decision is with the offtake of the water?
Conflict on this
I
one.
do apologise, Councillor Kelly.
Councillor Kelly is leaving the room at 7:41 due to a conflict with this particular question.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. So we've received communication very recently from North East Water about some information that's been to their board with a revised proposal, looking at the original site, but some modifications, removing a weir, some modifications to the building to make it less visibly impactful. And my understanding is they're seeking input from the community. They've certainly sought some input from council. They've held a number of community sessions, and they're having another meeting of the reference group as well to work through and establish feedback. Yeah, so it does seem to be moving forward.
Councillor Kelly will rejoin the meeting now at 7:42. I have some general business tonight, and I'll just read a couple of things out. The Executive Director of Heritage Victoria has accepted a nomination for the street trees of Bright to be considered for inclusion in the Victorian Heritage Register. The notification we have received from Heritage Victoria identifies the possibility of a large number of street trees and avenues within Bright being of state heritage significance. I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the community members who nominated the street trees of Bright for consideration by Heritage Victoria. That particular group, the tree group, have shown great determination in pursuing this application, highlighting the importance of Bright's trees to its residents and visitors, and just bringing it to top of mind for all of us. We understand from Heritage Victoria that the assessment of the application is unlikely to take place in the short to medium term due to a high number of nominations awaiting assessment, but the acceptance of the nomination is an extremely important step. This nomination aligns with the preliminary assessment of the avenue of trees along the Great Alpine Road to the west of Bright, which was commissioned by council officers last year. The early assessment recommended that all 6 avenues of trees in Bright may meet the threshold of state significance. The document, which council officers expect to receive in May, will be an important contribution to Heritage Victoria's future assessment. So again, personally and on behalf of council, I'd just like to thank those people that were so persistent in pointing out the plight of the trees, save the trees, and the fact that they do have some heritage significance. So congratulations to you guys, and I'm glad to see we've got somewhere with that one. That is a good community input, that one. Okay, reception and reading of petitions, motions for which notice has been given have been none. Receptions and reading of petitions, item 13, none. We have documents for sealing, and we have 7 documents for sealing. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Janus and Councillor Prime. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. And there being no further business of this council meeting, I would like to thank those that have remained staunch and remained with us. Thank you for the journey. And I'll declare the council meeting closed at 7:44. Thank you very much, everyone.